Hello, and thanks for tuning in. As always, this is Reverend JR. Today, we're going to take a look at that thing. Let's see, it's on that side. Alright. So, as you can see, we have an article from Answers in Genesis. If you're not familiar with them for some reason, it's run by Ken Ham. He has a boat, if you're not familiar. This happens to be written by some lady here. Apparently she's written one thing. Well, okay then. A purpose better than feminism. So, what we're looking at here is AIG's take, I suppose, written by a woman, on how feminism does or does not mesh with the Bible. I'll leave it to you to guess, which one that's going to be. Vape Nation. Emotions run high whenever we talk about feminism and the role of women. Given the long history of conflict, it's no wonder we run to extremes, but there's a third option. So as you can see, the first thing we're doing is setting this up as an idea that there is feminism, there's no feminism, and there's something else. Fair enough, I guess, whatever. Few things get people more up in arms than when we talk about gender and God's design for women. Well, yeah, if you read the Bible, it's not really a pleasant thing, I guess. Even those within the Christian community bring a lot of baggage to how we view manhood and womanhood according to the Bible's creation account. Right. That's kind of why we're here. I understand the frustration and fear regarding gender. Not really. There's not a whole lot of frustration and fear regarding it. It just happens to be something a lot of people disagree with. But anyway, since sin entered the world, men and women have been in conflict. We have experienced appalling distortions of God's design on multiple fronts. Rape, domestic violence, sexual harassment, and other evils. Hello, Matches. Thanks for joining. In the past, some men have even quoted the Bible to justify injustices. Correct, they have. No wonder emotions run high. Well, yeah, when you've got a book that says one thing and biology that says another, I mean, what do you expect, honestly? This video not brought to you by Keystone. I just happen to enjoy it. It's not great beer, but it's alright. Feminism arose to address these wrongs, and I'm thankful for that. Yeah, it's a good thing that it happened. I guess, yeah, why not? I'm glad I can vote, own property, and get paid the same as a man. Unfortunately, the Bible doesn't agree with you, but you're going to tell us why the Bible does, even though it doesn't, aren't you? Yet, my support for change doesn't mean I support feminists' underlying views. The general underlying view of feminism is that women should, generally speaking, be equal to men. There are a few different waves of it, and some of it is disagreeable in my opinion, but the general underlying view is that people should be equal. Matches says that voice on point. Well, thank you. Indeed, feminism itself has become another one of those distortions of God's design for gender. Well, I mean, yeah, God says that, women are to serve men and men are to serve God. So, you can disagree with it all you like, I guess, but that doesn't make it any less in the Bible. Feminism promised to give women equality and freedom from injustices, but it sought answers in the wrong places. Not really, though. I mean, in the beginning, feminism was fine. The point of it was, women's suffrage. It was feminism before it was called that, I guess. But egalitarianism is basically the same thing, just without the genderized bent. In turn, feminist ideology slowly redefined manhood, womanhood, and even personhood contrary to God's word. Right, it made pretty much everybody equal. Like we the people, in order to form a more perfect union and so on. While you might think feminism is some soapbox limited to liberals and women who hate men, no, that's a very different thing altogether, honestly. Feminism has left its mark on all of us. Yeah, fair enough, whatever. So how should Christians respond to feminism and its influence? Well, they should respond like reasonable humans, I suppose. Are some aspects okay? Yes. How can you discern if feminism has affected you? It's not a disease, come on. I mean, some people take it to the extreme, but whatever. What is feminism? Now we're getting to the meat and taters. Before we get into the biblical view, we need a working definition of feminism. Let's see what they say. Usually, it is equated with equality. And that's where it gets dicey. Not really. Feminism in its purest form is a form of egalitarianism that strives to make everyone on an equal playing field. Not necessarily a more equitable playing field, though. Good beer. Kinda. In our... Oops, that's too high. That looks better. In our culture, equality takes on a variety of meanings. Yeah, unfortunately, equality should just be equality. In its most basic form, it is the quality or state of being equal. The quality or state of having the same rights, social status, and so on. Today, equality can mean anything from freedom from judgment over personal choices. No, that's a secondary thing to feminism. Matches of Fun says, equated with equality sounds kind of redundant to me. They're just saying that one word means another word. It's a weird phrasing. Fair enough. I didn't write it, I'm just reading it. Such as homosexuality, same-sex marriage, and transgendered rights, etc. No, it doesn't mean freedom from judgment. It means that the people who engage in them should be treated equally. But we'll get to that, I'm sure. To being paid the same wage regardless of gender. Right. If you're doing the same job as someone else, which isn't often that two jobs are exactly identical, but if you're doing the same kind of job for the same company or whatever, you should be paid the same regardless of if you're a man or a woman. But that's not feminism, that's egalitarianism. Again, a tiny little distinction. But feminism claims it, even though, again, feminism did not invent it. We Christians see equality between the sexes as a declaration of our equal worth and value as image bearers. Except you don't. We'll get to that. We are equal before God in salvation, sinfulness, and our personhood. Kinda. In the Bible, it doesn't really work that way, though, because it can't work that way because of the way everything's set up in the Bible to not be that way. Beer stream. Beer stream. In my book, The Accidental Feminist, I show how feminism has a different meaning for equality. Equality equals sameness. No, equality means... In the feminist definition, it means equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. You've seen that in some places before. That's not to say it's good or bad, it's just to say it is a thing that it is. In other words, men and women are created equal. They're not created, except for the fact that they're, conceived and born and whatever. Although men and women are not born... Children are born, you become a man or a woman as you age, but that's a different semantical issue. Not only in personhood and worth, but in role and function. Generally, yes, that's exactly what feminism wants. Except when it doesn't, Like when we point out that there are discrepancies in the court system or in basic menial physical labor kind of jobs or even in higher paid occupations. Matt just says, no beer for me, not only too early, still don't want to touch it yet. Yeah, it's a good idea. That hangover you had sounds pretty terrible. So I do not recommend drinking for you. I, however, am going to have a couple. But yeah, definitely. Drink in moderation. That definition isn't exhaustive, that's correct, but it captures what feminism has sought in the last century. More or less, not exactly. If you count the most recent iteration of it, I guess it's not a bad definition. It's a definition. It asserts that if men and women are equal, which they are, remember that for later, they should have the same options for what they can do with their lives. Right, they should have, but men cannot have babies, and women tend not to pay the child support. Just saying. It's a thing that exists that feminism doesn't fight to fix. Not that you can, because it's biology, but I think you get my point. That's not to downplay any of it, that's just saying that's simply what it is. Men cannot get maternity leave because men do not have babies. In some countries you can get paternity leave, but that's different. According to feminism, gender is merely biological. No, it isn't. According to feminism, gender is a social construct. And the sex, male or female, is biological, but you even have different biological markers that feminists use to decide whether a person is a man or a woman apart from the outward expression of genes. You have also the inward or recessive or whatever expression of genes, as well as the makeup of the brain and the physical chemistry of the body and that sort of thing. But let's keep it simple. Matches says, give me my rights to give birth. I'm sorry, I can't help you put a baby maker where the baby maker isn't. Science just isn't quite there yet. We can all sympathize with this independent spirit. It's not independence, though. It's an interdependence where men and women are equal and therefore rely on each other in equal measure. If it were about independence, women wouldn't be calling on men to fight for it, and men would not be trying to deprive it from women, and vice versa. Who has a right to tell me what to do? The law, for one. Yet therein lies the dangerous roots of feminism. It opposes all authority. No, it doesn't. It seeks to make authority equal. Although, again, there are reasons why that doesn't work biologically, evolutionarily, sociologically, and so on, but we don't need to get into those for this part of the argument. Even the authority of our maker. Right, we don't believe in... I don't believe in your maker. So, I don't believe he has any authority, or she or it or whatever. You see, lady, what was her name? Courtney Reisig. Okay, Courtney. I don't believe in your maker any more than you believe in the fact that I don't believe it, I guess, is what I'm saying. A crash course in feminist history. This is not going to be tilted at all, is it? Nope. While feminist ideology is not biblical, correct, it isn't. Some of its goals are good and very much needed. Did you hear what Courtney just said there? She said that the goals are good and very much needed even though they're not in the Bible, and, you know, they basically directly contradict what the Bible says. But they're good. You know, as an atheist, I believe the same thing. But I don't believe I'm going to go to hell for saying that your God got it wrong, is the difference. Feminism is traditionally divided into three waves, first, second, and third. Right. First wave feminists in the 1800s, not exactly. First wave was right around the 1960s or 70s. Before then, it wasn't feminism per se. It was different. But anyway, no need to be pedantic. Fine. We're primarily concerned about voting rights. No. They were also concerned about getting, basic human rights to all women regardless of color, nationality, or whatever. The voting thing was kind of secondary in the 1800s, you see. Suffrage didn't come about until later in the 1900s when women actually started getting more of a voice from the stuff that came before. It was a thing. It wasn't a primary thing at that time, though. Ending slavery, for example, was a bigger issue at that point in time. This, in turn, would allow women to protect their children from harsh factories. Right, generally they're male children. Protect themselves from unfaithful husbands who could divorce them on a whim. Yeah. But then again, that's exactly the kind of power feminists want today. So that they can divorce their husbands for perceived inconveniences. Although I don't see a reason why two people shouldn't be allowed to get, the divorce for whatever reason they want. But then again, I don't think marriage should be part of the law. I think it should be strictly civil in the first place. But we're talking about feminism, so it's not a big deal. And provide more options for work. Well, by that they mean allow women to work in the first place. Because if you remember, men went out into the coal mines. Women were not fighting for that right. Rightfully so. The cotton fields were terrible places. The factories were absolutely terrible places. The women were not fighting for rights to work in them. Do not get, deceived there. In general, they just wanted, both men and women, wanted better conditions in general, and that's why they work on the programs, the social welfare programs, the TVA, and everything that came later in the 1900s. This is not a good crash course in feminist history. Matches says suffragettes is what they mean back with the voting. Right, basically. Yes, but that came actually around the turn of the 1900s, not in the 1800s exactly. We might get into that later, but this is more about the feminist side of it rather than the women's rights side of it. Two different things. One's a human rights issue, one is a gender equality issue, which is a subset of the human rights issue, but it is more pushed in the modern era, the last 60 years or so, than it was before then. Because women didn't have any form of equality up to a certain point. And now, for the past 50 or so years, women have had much more equality with men in the modern developed world due to the movements that came before it in general for human rights, which includes things like unionization, by the way. At that time, women really were voiceless and powerless. For the most part, unfortunately, that's kind of true. Although, except in parts of the country where it wasn't true. Moving on, and while some early feminists rejected God's word, such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton, I can't read names. I don't know who that is, so whatever. There could have been a link to it right there. There could have been a link to like a Wikipedia page or something. I could just click it, and away I would go. But here we are. The problems were real and needed a biblical response. No, I disagree. If it were for the biblical response, the women would still be subservient to men in all regard. See my last video for a little more about that on the whole Catholic thing and how the Bible works. But I could even do a whole thing on that if I wanted. In fact, I am, now that I think about it. Oh, there goes a truck. Anyway, if you'll watch my series I'm doing on the missing dimension in sex, you'll see a lot of these biblical arguments for why women should be subservient to men and how sex should work according to the Bible and that sort of thing from an actual biblical scholar of the 40s to 60s. Fast forward 100 years. Betty Friedan, second wave, 100 years, I don't know, that must be the 60s, so this must have been 1860s they were talking about, challenged women to recognize that their identity goes beyond being a wife and mother. In some cases, that's the problem with feminism, though. Some women want explicitly to be wives and mothers. There is a basic biological calling in some people that makes them want to be parents, want to have offspring, want to care for the children. And it tends to present a lot more in women than it does in men because of our form of sexual dimorphism that humans engaged in for the past 500,000 years, before we were even humans. Which, again, is not a bad thing. Correct, it's not. We do not ultimately find our identity in our home, work, body, or marital status, but in the God who made us. No? I mean, maybe you. But again, you're saying that shouldn't be it because you couldn't, but anyway. Matches says, wait. So is this person trying to use the Bible and feminism together? It's weird. This right now is just defining what feminist history is more than saying what their stance on it is. Although it is biased because it's, AIG. But they're trying to say this is the basic premise under which feminists work, so that they can set up their argument and show their counterpoints to it. So no, this is not exactly what they're trying to do right this moment. They're just trying to color it that way, if you will. That looks kind of cool. That's a neat effect on the camera. I like that. Today's third wave feminists take it a step further and tell women to forget restraint and flaunt their sexuality freely. No, third wave feminists actually do not want you to flaunt your sexuality. They just want men to accept that all men are attracted to all women regardless of anything, but they reject the idea that women should be attracted to men for exactly the same reasons. This is why you have the MGTOWs and the MRAs in direct opposition to the feminists, because there are third-wave feminists who are in this camp, and to not oppose it would be silly. To take a midline stance already gets you their ire. But again, we're talking about the history here more than the actual stances they've taken, so it's a broad stroke, and it's trying to set it up to be exceptionally liberal so the author of this article can step in and be reasonably conservative and look like the good guy by comparison, so to speak. Feminism responded to a real problem. Correct. Inequality and injustice. Exactly the same as egalitarianism had done for about a century before that, even. Matches says, okay, just had me right confused for a second. Basically, they're just trying to say that this is the position all feminists take in like 7 small paragraphs, just so that they can explain it to anybody who hasn't heard it before. I just disagree with some of the way they're setting it up, but Courtney's not exactly wrong. She's just not right either. But, again, why do we start with the conjunctions at the beginning of a sentence? Dang it, Ken Ham, you're brutalizing this language that you believe your God gave us. And that's a sin, Ken. But it didn't give the right answer because it was missing a crucial component. God's word. No. A lot of feminists were Christian up until the more recent era. A lot of them are now Muslim or whatever. Matches says, oh damn, Papa Rev vapes. Yep, vape nation. Oh, that's a neat effect too, isn't it? Yeah, the vape is kind of cool. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's a decent one. It's a Stick X8. Creates a lot of vapor. It's got an M4 coil in it right now, I think, which is a little too heavy for me, but it's fine. It's kind of weird how the chroma key worked with that. Anyway, let's go back to this. Inequality and injustice. But it didn't give the right answer because it was missing a crucial component, God's word. God gave us equality from the very beginning, an equal opportunity to enjoy full life in Him. And then we quote a Bible verse that is not in the beginning. If He gave us equality from the very beginning, He should have just created woman with man, instead of thinking after the fact that woman should be a thing. Like, Oops, I forgot this. Let's grab a rib and make another. I'm not the all-powerful God that can just make anything out of everything. I've got to make things out of things that are already there, like men that are superior to women in the Bible. Matches says I have the V8 using a single coil. I don't know exactly what that means because I don't vape hardcore. I've got friends that do. I'm presuming that means like a 1500th ohm or something. It's very relaxing. But yeah, smoking's bad, kids. Don't do it, you know. Drinking's not so good. Do it in moderation, like everything. I'm still on my first beer. I drink really slow. I'm drinking fast right now. We didn't need a modern movement to tell us that. We did, actually. What does 2 Peter 1:3 say? His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence. We'll just leave that there. I'm not gonna... We're not discussing the Bible exactly right here. This is gonna be a long stream. About 20-something minutes in. Not bad. We're just gonna have a long stream tonight because some people enjoy that. Rejecting the words of the Creator who knows what is best for us. Except he really doesn't seem to in some instances. Like, sending plagues to wipe out lots of people just to make a point to some leader when he could just talk to the leader. But then again, he could only talk to Moses for some reason. So, whatever. Feminism has morphed into the sexuality-laden version we have today. I wouldn't even say it's that sexuality-laden. Like, it's more sexually libertarian than other movements, but, the Bible is kind of in the opposite direction, too, so, I mean, whatever. Without a belief in the Bible's sufficiency to guide our lives, that's actually kind of a pretty sentence, even though I don't like what it's saying, we end up just like those who have gone before. Shame your God keeps allowing that, I guess. Thrown about by every new idea and problem that comes our way. Not really, though. You know. Matt just says, oh yeah, take it from me, don't drink yourself to death, kids. Especially the children. Don't drink. Drinking is bad if you're a child. I don't think any 8-year-olds are clicking on my video to watch me talk about feminism. So, fair enough, they're not going to hear my message. But drugs are bad, okay? Anyway. It can be tempting, especially if you reject feminism, to hear all of this talk, and think it doesn't apply to you. I'm not sure that it does apply to me. I'm a straight white man, after all. The only thing I'm supposed to do is agree, according to some feminists. But, again with the conjunction at the beginning of the sentence, lady, English, whatever. The reality is we all have adopted this notion. Sorry, I do that sometimes too. When they get the things backwards to my understanding of English. But then again, English is ever evolving. Conjunctions can join nothing, I guess. This notion of self-defining rebellion in some way. It's not rebellion, though, because the norm is kind of crappy in a way. Again, I'm not a feminist. I'm not a MGTOW or an MRA. I just think that we need good human rules for everything. Not that we're necessarily going to get them. We have to be practical to some degree and understand that men and women are indeed different. And that includes trans folk who are different in their own way, and so on. The root of feminism, while sometimes grounded in the best of intentions, is about taking matters into our own hands rather than going back to God's Word. Right, if we go back to God's Word, women are, 1 Timothy 2:12, I believe, to be quiet in all subservience and not speak, not teach, do whatever a man says, basically. And that's not exactly what you seem to be arguing in the rest of the article either. Matches says, I know what a MGTOW is, but what's an MRA? MRA is a, men's rights activist I recommend watching Dr. Randomer Cam. He's a bit of a comedian. That's what he does for his regular job, I believe. And he's a bit hardline on, some of his humor comes off kind of coarse. But he kind of gets the MRA points across very well. He's not a MGTOW, but he is a men's rights activist in exactly the same way a feminist is a women's rights activist. So if you want, watch Dr. Randomer Cam, watch Riley Dennis, see which one you kind of align more with, and then you'll know which side of the spectrum you fall on regarding feminism versus MRA, MGTOW, or whatever. Feminism actually runs much deeper into our psyches than we realize, from the woman who scoffs at the man who opens the door for her. Yeah, some people are dicks. I open doors for anybody. To the woman who finds ways to bash the men in her life in every conversation. Yeah, but that's not strictly just, feminism. That's just some men and women are kind of dicks. Feminism has sunk its teeth into men. Some of them, yeah, that's why cuck is so popular right now. 2, as it strips them of their natural bent to protect and lead women, thus opening the door, to passivity. Passivity? Is that even a word? Or aggression. Feminism isn't to blame for all the world's problems, but it has impacted us in ways we often do not realize. Right, most people don't really care. Most people just want to be treated like a human. Let's work on that. The Christian response to feminism. Man, it looks like a really weird word now that I've said it so many times. Oral fixation or something. Sorry, I know some people get tweaky when I go up and down like that with the screen. My apologies. Some people don't even like when I highlight it, but I have to do that to show you where I am. That way, everyone stays on the same page. Also, in case you can't read it for some reason, if the resolution drops or something, then you know at least about where I am if you're following along or whatever. Speaking of which, this is answersingenesis.org/family/whatever. You can find it. It's on their front page right this moment. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. While this famous line from the poem Invictus is not unique to feminism, it is a common theme. Right, it's not unique, is the point. Not unique. Anyway, it expresses the spirit of every heart. What the hell does that mean? No, it clearly doesn't. There are sects within feminism that do not agree with one another. Feminists, once they won the right to vote and own their identity... No, you just told me feminists won the right to vote for women. They didn't win the right to vote for feminists. You see, this is English. This is the subject. These are the objects. They won it for women and, by extension, for everyone, especially when, slavery ended and black people got the right to vote and that sort of thing. It's not just a feminist thing that the suffragettes were fighting for. Began claiming the right to define themselves sexually. Well, I mean, why not? Why not be able to tell people what you are? To, disambiguate so people know whether you're into the kind of person they are or not. Personally, I don't care for the labels. Just hook up with people and see if you're compatible or not. And if you're not, that's fine. Move on. Whatever. I'm asexual. I'm single. I don't get any of it, I guess. That's the point. But, another conjunction that joins nothing. None of us, man or nor, N goes there, has the right. Wrong. We are the created, God is the creator, and he defines us. No. We don't agree. You have to explain to me that this is true before you can assert that it is a reason for anything. To understand God's design for women, remember, God has a separate design for men and women, by the way, in the Bible, just putting it out there. We have to go back to the beginning. Ooh, wonderful. I have fun with this one. Is that Genesis 1 or 2 I want? Anyway, let's allow Scripture to be our guide as we think through God's definition of us. Well, no, it's not God's definition either, because the Bible was written by men who claimed to be, inspired by God. Women didn't get to do the writing. Back when the Bible was a thing, there were not women scribes, generally speaking, until quite a bit later. Oral tradition passed mostly through men in the kinds of societies where this was. The kind of oral tradition that passed down through women was different, and we have less record of it. It's a historical thing. I'm not going to get into it here, because I'm certainly not an expert on that. But there's a reason, even like the Odyssey, Odysseus, he is the one known for it, regardless of who was telling about it. You don't really get women doing the whole oral tradition thing until later when you go to the Greeks, who had the muses and the female goddesses and that sort of thing. And the women passed down much more tradition and owned land, and basically men were accountable to women, and men had to join the army and that sort of thing as you get into the Roman tradition as well. But anyway, Matches says, I'm about to write the Bible inspired by Rev. I don't want to start a religion. That sounds like a bad idea. Just take it from Abraham Lincoln. Try to be most awesome to everyone. I mean, that wasn't Abraham Lincoln. That's a meme. In Genesis 1:26-27, that's a good one. Then God said, let us make in our image after our likeness. I skipped a word. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over blah, 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 blah. Right, and God created them. And he still hadn't created women. Animals were more important. Don't forget. The first thing we see about the creation of Adam and Eve is that they were created in God's image. No? No, actually. That's not true at all. If you look at Genesis, you'll see 1 and 2 specifically. How do we say this? It does say that thing there a little lower. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. So he created man in his own image, the image of God. He created him, male and female. He created them. But if you listen to the story a bit more, you'll see that God created man, then created animals and plants, except in Genesis 2, where man was already there, and then, or fucking whatever. So anyway, the other problem you run into is that God created man, then pulled a rib from man to create woman for man to have a companion. He didn't create both of them in his image, because he's a man. He wouldn't create a woman in his image, unless there were two gods, actually, which Genesis is polytheistic, kinda, because it's not explicitly Yahweh by himself. It even says, we did this, we did that, and so on, and you don't really get the idea of a singular monotheistic kind of God until you get into, like, Daniel and David and that sort of thing. But you can watch the Bible Reloaded for their Bible study if you like. Papa Jake blocked me on Twitter because he doesn't like dissenting opinions, but they do make a good YouTube channel. To be human, whether a man or a woman, is to bear the image of the Creator, the one who made you. I will also say, while I'm thinking about it, Godless Engineer also has a Bible study he's doing. You might want to check out. He's pretty cool. Bearing God's image means we represent God on this earth. No, Jesus did that. I mean, what? I've never heard that before. That's weird. It's weird. It also means that because you, as a woman, were created in his image, and again, we said, no, you weren't, you have incredible worth and value. Yeah, and it tells us in Exodus, I think, how much women and men are worth if they're slaves. Women are worth roughly about 2/3 that of an equivalent man. Just saying, if that's incredible, then men are even more incredible, according to the Bible. Just saying. You are equal to men. No, you're not. Not because feminism says so, but because God says so. No, in the Bible, women are not equal to men. I don't care how you want to slice it. You're simply not. But then again, I don't believe that the Bible is the authoritative word of anyone. so I can dismiss it, just like I don't believe in the Book of Mormon, or the Quran, or any of it, you see. Matches says, it's too late, you already are a religion. Well, okay then. We also see in Genesis 1:26-27 the same Bible verse. The same Bible verse. That part of being an image bearer is being either male or female. No, because if they're both in his image, then it doesn't mean you're either. You could actually be both, because you're in his image, unless he has two images. Because this is the kind of mental gymnastics you have to do if you want to believe in it. Genesis 1 and 2 have the creation story in reverse, by the way. I brought this up. Ken Ham blocked me for it. Eric Hovind claimed he could tell me about it, but then he linked me to AIG and never responded again. But at least he didn't block me, I guess. Ray Comfort never got back to me about it either. But yeah, Genesis 1, God creates, the rain, then the plants, then the animals, then man. And in Genesis 2, man is already there, then God creates the earth, and then God puts down the plants and then waters them with the rain. Makes them grow, and then the animals come. Completely the opposite. Yep, emotes do seem to show up. It's not random that we have men and women. No. It's natural selection, it's sexual dimorphism, that sort of thing. I've talked about that before. Other people have talked about it better than I have. Aaron Ra, for example. Very good at the whole, phylogeny and everything. And how that works. There's a few other good YouTubers at that rate, too. Can, too. It's a basic quality of being made in the image of God. No, no, no. The fact that we have been given a gender is important and helps us understand how we are made in God's image. Really, though, it makes you wonder. For women, God's image is seen in two key ways, as a life giver and as a helper. Right, and he punishes you for giving the life because a snake lied to you that he allowed to lie to you. But, whatever. The point of snakes, apparently, is to lie to people and then be cursed. Because God made a snake and then made it lie because... That makes sense. Hello, Mike. How are you today? Adam named his wife Eve. Right, just like the animals, he named her. Because she was to become the mother of all living. Also, that's wrong. Genesis 3:20. No. If you look in the Bible... The God that's mentioned in the Bible only created Adam and Eve. The God in the Bible did not create the other tribes from which Cain and Abel, or rather Cain because Abel died, took their wives. Eve is only the mother of Cain's progeny, not of the women he married. I actually had another video I did where I responded to some Islamic people who said that Cain and Abel were actually two parts of a story. I forget who they were. I forget their names. It was something kind of neat. Mike says AIG is a Christ-tard apologetic site. Answers in Genesis is run by Ken Ham, the same guy that made the big boat that doesn't float. I'm going to visit that someday, and I'm going to have a lot of fun just walking around and looking at the wax statues, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, AIG is Ken Ham's website. The same Ken Ham that had a debate with Bill Nye, and so on. But no, back to what I was saying there. Eve is not the mother of all living. She's only like the mother of half of the lineage. And then you've got the Nephilim and everything else that God did or didn't create or something, and it's weird because they're demigods. They're kind of like Hercules. They're the sons of God and man, and they were giants, and the Nephilim were the same things that Moses encountered when he went to the Promised Land and got scared and all that. But anyway, that's a part of the same story, kind of. Biologically, we know this to be true because women are uniquely equipped to bring life into the world. No. trees bring life into the world, and they don't always have sexual distinctions. Fungus are basically completely asexual. But another conjunction that joins nothing. It's more than that. Mike says, Kenham, triggered. Brrr. Author Jen Wilkin describes it as life-giving in the face of death. You know what, okay, why should I care, lady? Get back on topic. Tell me about how feminism meshes with your frickin' Bible or whatever. Mike says, Nephilim were half angels, from what I understood. They're weird. They're half angel, demigod, whatever suits the narrative thing. Matches says, trees are hard. Alright, let's go to the next paragraph, because, again, this is more proselytization. God also defines the woman by calling her a helper. Right, she is man's little helper. She is to be quiet and subservient. She is only to speak to her husband about certain things. She is supposed to do whatever he says regardless of anything, because he is supposed to serve God and protect her, and be the head of the household and the one to whom she and the other people under him are accountable. That's weird. After surveying his creation, God declared that among all of his creation there was not a helper suitable for Adam. Right, God made a bunch of animals and then wondered why none of them was human, because apparently God forgot that women are humans, you see. So he made the woman. Yeah, I mean, you just said it for me. That word helper can give us a lot of trouble unless we appreciate its rich meaning. She's another thing that God created for man to do with as he likes in the Bible. Again, that's why it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Matches says, Mike has some good helpful input and I really only know memes. Mike is very knowledgeable in some things. He's fun to have here. He connotates for me generously. Adam needed a compliment. He needed someone to fulfill what was missing. But I mean, how did he know something was missing if God hadn't actually created sex for him to actually, you know, desire? One might be inclined to ask. Especially since Adam had no knowledge of it, because he had no knowledge of shame and knowledge of nakedness and knowledge of any of that. Presumably he knew nothing about it until God forced it upon him, because apparently God thinks loneliness is just horniness, even though Adam had no way to actually be attracted to anything because he hadn't eaten the fruit of the tree. I never thought about that argument before. That's really weird. He needed someone to help him with the task of ruling over God's creation. Right, helping, not actually doing it. So God made the woman out of his side. Yeah, I mean, God could have just, you know, made woman the same way he made man. But she's not that special. Or something. When we hear the word helper, we can think that it's the demeaning role, a position beneath us. It is. But helper is actually used to describe God, too. He is our helper in times of trouble, although in salvation and in sanctification. The problem with that is the Old Testament was written in a different language from these three books. And the word helper in the context of these three is different from the word helper in the context of this one. It's just a matter of it's a homonym, if you will. Mike says, I know things, sometimes I'm wrong. Hey, me too. I like to be wrong because it means I learn things and then I can be right. So being wrong is okay. As long as you learn from it, you know, don't step on a landmine twice. Just good life advice. Whether you are single or married, God created you to strengthen, encourage, shape, and serve the relationships in your life. If I'm a single lady, okay, And God defines me to be a helper. But I do not have a man there to help. How do I have any meaning in my life? God says, women are made from men so they may help them and fulfill them. Make them complete, be their companion. But if a woman isn't that thing, then, doesn't that mean that she's not actually anything that God designed her to be? Also, it's all in the context of men. It's not independent from men. That's one of the fundamental tenets of feminism, especially in the modern age, is that women are not defined by their relationship to men. They're just defined by the fact that they're human. You see, this is something this article is glossing over, because I don't think Courtney here actually knows the feminist argument. Again, I don't agree with all the feminist stuff, but at least I understand it. The same as I don't agree with this, the biblical argument, but I at least try to understand it. Mike says, never want to step on a landmine once. That's a good point. I've never done it. But I've heard other people say it's not a good thing. People that tend to be missing legs or whatever. So, they made a mistake, and I can learn from it. That's really morbid. Matches says, don't meme the same person too hard twice, is also good advice. That's like a poem. Anyway, married women, this is seen most evidently in your marriage. But, son of a diddly, how many butts are we on? Conjunctions at the beginning of a sentence is like a train with a caboose but no engine. It doesn't make sense. Single women can live this out in their relationships as well. No, they necessarily can't, especially if the relationship you have is only with other women, for example. I mean, helper is no more beneath us than it is beneath God himself. Wrong. You're just wrong. The Bible doesn't argue for the point you're trying to make it argue for. And just ignoring part of the Bible doesn't really help you either, because then you lose the context for the things you are talking about. Come on, lady. How can to be honest, your faith has to be pretty strong if you believe it and you've never actually read it, I guess. Right? How does the song go? Trust and obey or something? Ooh. Fancy. The fall and restoration. Let's see here. Feminism responded to some very real problems, but in the wrong ways. You see, there's the problem, though. If your God had responded to the problems in the first place, they wouldn't exist for feminism to fix. Next paragraph. All the battles we face as men and women can be traced back to that fateful day in the garden, when sin broke our perfect harmony. Except they had no idea they were sinning because they didn't know right from wrong, because, that was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They had no knowledge of good nor evil until they ate from it. So they couldn't know that eating from the tree was a sin, even though God had told them, because they didn't have that knowledge. But we should have a drinking game. Every time the sentence starts with a conjunction, you take a shot. But so can all of our hope. If it's a sentence fragment, take two. Don't do that, though. You'll die. The fall wasn't the final word on feminism. Injustice or unbelief in God and his word. God promised a seed, giggity, that would bring restoration. If you say so. I mean, fucking what? I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. What? How does saying enmity between you such that you fight each other brings about restoration. Why would your God put that there? That's a dick move. Why wouldn't he put harmony between you so that you don't want to do those things? You know, that doesn't bode well for your book. Matt just says, I'll sit out this game. That's the drinking game. That's a good idea. I don't drink much, but I'm on my half of my second beer. And we're not quite an hour into it. So that's a good rate. I don't really have any liquor here. I have water. Remember to stay hydrated. It keeps the headaches away. I've had a headache all day. I wish I could say that I've got this whole thing down. I wish you could say that too, Courtney. I have the sincerest hope and, you know, whim and want that you will indeed get this whole thing down. Then you can understand wherein the problem lies that I'm having with it. But that would be a lie. No, it would be the truth that you wish you could say that you've got it down. You see. The truth is, I still see the old seeds of feminism rise up in me. Good. From how I listen to my husband when he leads to how I view the authority of my pastors. No. You misunderstood feminism again. Courtney. Come on, Courtney. You say it with me. Feminism is not defined by the woman's relationship to the man. Feminism is defined as giving equality between them. Or if you want, you know. Matt just says, water is pretty great. So glad the gods created it. Thank Loki that we have water. Or is it Thor, because he does the thunder? No, it was probably Triton or Poseidon. Whichever name you want to give him. Like Eve before me, I want to be the master of my own destiny. Eve was not, though. Her only purpose was to be a mother. Just saying. What is this? Oh, I have to answer that real quick. Pardon me for a second, but yeah, I mean, you get the idea. It's just kind of weird how that works and all. I mean, you know. Sorry about that. But like Eve, I can look to Christ who crushes every sin that so easily entangles us. You know, except for the original one that got her kicked out of the garden with her husband. It's her fault, don't forget, in the Bible. Even though God essentially done it. But anyway, including feminism. Feminism is a sin. Sure, whatever. Okay. I won't fully be free from my anti-authoritarian heart until that final day. Why are you... whatever. Yet I take great hope because the God who gave me life in Christ will continue remaking me in his image until I get home. Why is it you have to die to get home? Why can't God just make things good here? Why do we need a purgatory? If God... Except in purgatory, God doesn't actually fix you. Weird. I wonder what the mechanism is in purgatory. Since you have to go through purgatory to be purified to, you know, see God, before he will view you, before he will take you into heaven, you have to be fixed in purgatory, and it's clearly not by him, otherwise he'd be observing you. So purgatory is a place where God can't see you? I'm thinking too hard about this. We can skip that. Oh wait, we're almost at the end. Is this the addition here? Let's tear right into it. Matt just says this article is reducing my brain cells by the sentence. Be resilient, be strong. Keep those brain cells alive by working them out. Like Bionic Dance says, don't run on automatic. Think. Perhaps one of the most talked about stories of 2015, #relevant, was the transformation of Olympic star Bruce Jenner to Vanity Fair's cover woman, Caitlyn Jenner. Oh no. We're going to talk about this again. Jenner, who identifies as transgender, good for her, switched from male to female to the praise of the mainstream media. But not everyone in the feminist movement was thrilled. At least it's not a fragment. Because if you remove the but, it's actually a sentence. An opinion piece in the New York Times, why should I care, posed the important and unlikely question, except that it's important so it's unlikely, or it's unlikely because it's important. Coming from a feminist, does that make a difference? What makes a woman a woman? Well, if it's gender, and gender is a social construct, then it's basically whatever society decides. Again, that's the thing when you get to the non-binary. If it's a spectrum, okay. And, you know, men are like here and women are like here. And you say, well, I'm generally here, but sometimes I'm over here. You can't really transition from one binary to the other if you do not have it. This is just a general thing with feminism and gender identity and whatever. If you're binary, if you have a binary, rather, even if it's a social construct, you can go from this one to this one. If it's a slide rule, though, then you can't. And if you use traditional gender roles to define what you're transitioning from and to, rather than biology, then you've still got a binary. Because you can still say, I'm predominantly this or predominantly that, or I identify as this or that today. Again, I just disagree with the way these things are defined, not whether or not they exist. Johnny Drive-By says, hi, Rev and all. Hello, Johnny Drive-By. So glad you could stop by. Haven't seen you in a while. Does Caitlyn Jenner have the right to declare himself female simply because he feels trapped in the wrong body? Sure, you have the right to declare just about anything. You can say you're a transracial alien helicopter, for all I care. It doesn't necessarily make it true, but it also doesn't necessarily make it false. It's just a declaration. You can change your name. You can change your gender. I don't really care. Like, that doesn't affect me. You can be a furry. You can be whatever. I don't care. It doesn't really affect me personally. Unless you try to do creepy things to me, I guess. Johnny says, been busy making vids. As have I. Videos are fun to make. But yeah, I mean, you have the right to say things. You have the right to act in a certain way that doesn't infringe on others' rights. Why not? Even if I agree or disagree with the gender binary and the transitions and everything, which I don't, you have the right to say what you think you are. Just like you have the right to change your religion. Or you have the right to wear a dress, even if you're a man, just because you enjoy them. I like kimono. They're comfortable. Right now I'm wearing sweat clothes, though. They're fairly gender neutral, I guess. The beard kind of gives me away. Not very many women have them, in my experience. The female logic, I define myself, when taken to its logical conclusion, says so. Sure, fair enough, whatever. But Matches says, Rev, I'm not acting weird towards you in the Discord, am I? I don't believe so. We'll discuss that in a bit. If you're talking about the server, rather. Feminism supposedly brought women the right to define themselves. Homosexuality buys the right... Did I skip something? Yeah. The fact that gender lived his life as a man means he can't begin to understand the struggles women face. Why, though? So while he may identify as trans, he can't identify truly as a woman. Oh, because it was written by a TERF, I bet. That's right. Whatever. And this is where the ideas of our increasingly and so on. I don't know why sexuality comes into gender arguments, because, like, I don't care if you call it homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, demisexual, pansexual, whatever. It's just sexuality. Get over it. Like, be attracted to what you're attracted to. I don't really care what you are. Like, granted, pedophilia is right out. And I think bestiality is weird as fuck. But you have the right to think how you feel about them. But barring things like pedophilia, yeah, be attracted to what you're attracted to. Even with regards to pedophilia, don't touch kitties. That's where we're going to leave that. But when the ideologies overlap, who is right? They're ideologies. You can both be right as long as you're not harming other people based upon it. Is gender really just a construct? Some people say so. That's why gender and sex and everything is generally seen as separate things. Sex is what you express. You are male or you are female. Gender, on the other hand, is a social construct. Matches says, nice save. This shows why a biblical understanding of God's design is so important. No, it doesn't. Because if you remember, who was that story? There's a lot of incest. There's a lot of weird things in the Bible. There's bears mauling children. I don't know that God's design is so great if it's God's design. God created Adam and Eve, allegedly, called them man and woman. Yeah, allegedly he did, and that was that. So what? You've already told me, further back up in the argument, if you recall, that you think feminism fights for some nice things, even if the Bible disagrees. Now you're saying feminism disagrees with the Bible, so it's wrong. You can't really have it both ways without a good justification. Sorry. And your justification is not present here. Especially when they're both related to each other in the justification in the first place. Mike says, Gaudy McGodface belief is weird to me. Believing in anything you don't have evidence for, apart from like, oh, I believe I can... I don't even know a good example. There are things you can believe in for which you have no evidence, no direct evidence at the very least. Like, for example, if I told you I used to be a paperboy, you have absolutely no evidence for it, but you can believe that. It's within the realm of believability. I was, in fact. But the point remains, you know, you don't have any evidence for it. I could be talking out my ass. But the point is, that's at least believable and doesn't change anybody's ideas on anything. I don't say I was a paperboy, therefore paperboys are the superior job. And anyone who disagrees is wrong, except for other journalists who deliver things that aren't paper. You know, it's just that kind of thinking. You don't get to change your anatomy. Sometimes you do. Remove an Adam's apple. Again, you could. Add some long hair. What? I can't have long hair? Weird. And call yourself a woman. I can do whatever I want, thank you very much. Again, as long as it doesn't infringe on you, I can walk around in frilly dresses and put on makeup. Matches of Fun says, paper boys pay the bills. Kinda. If paper routes paid better, I'd probably still be one, but, you know, that was a fun job in high school anyway. In an increasingly genderless world, no. Again, you just said that they're picking one gender and then the other. It's not genderless. Even non-binary is its own specific gender, separate from the male-female dynamic. It's weird, but I can understand the, you know, justification for it. Even if I don't agree with it, it doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. The justification is there and it's valid. Even if I don't like it. I can argue for things I don't like, you see. We will see more of this tension between individual freedom and ideology. Yeah, as long as you keep telling me crap like this, I'm going to keep telling you you're wrong. You're absolutely correct, Courtney. But how much is left? It's Keystone. It's not heavy beer. This is about the lightest beer you can get in America, in case you're not aware. This is about the cheapest beer that tastes decent. It's not even 50 cents a can. Or just a hair over. Very light, piss-colored beer. But it's tolerable. I like me a dark beer once in a while. I had a good one the other day. That was, yeah, I did a beer review on it even. It was really good. I forget what it was called now. Oh well. But at the end of the day, feminists are going to have to wrestle. That sounds like a very specific kind of kink. With the very thing they have been proclaiming all along. If gender is a construct, more a human invention than an unchanging truth, then anyone can be a man or woman if they define themselves as such. Correct. Doesn't mean I have to accept it. Doesn't mean I have to be attracted to it. Doesn't mean any of that crap. Just means you can. Matt just says, I mostly drink Imperial Stout and Guinness, so I have no idea about cheap beers here. You're from down under, I think Australia, this would be similar to... It tastes different to Bud Light. It tastes a little different to Foster's. But it's in that category. Every country has Bud Light. Every country has whatever. This is actually brewed by Coors. So it kind of tastes like Coors Light, but not exactly. But all light beer kind of tastes like light beer. Kind of has that weird banana kind of taste to it, which is not bad. But Budweiser, Bud Light, they're actually rice-based beers rather than barley or wheat. Yeah, Foster's is closer to like Steel Reserve and stuff up here. Or PBR. Or something of that nature. And this is in the same category. This just tastes better. And is a little higher ABV. A little higher percentage, I guess. Which doesn't really matter when you only drink like 3 of them in a week. But if gender is rooted in a person's essential nature, which it isn't, because it's again, if they say it's a construct, then it's not. You see. Then it's another discussion entirely. Right. And it's a discussion we don't need because you just said it is a construct, not an essential nature. Except then you're saying it's the Bible. You're saying feminism fights for it as being a construct, but then you're saying the Bible says it's not a construct. Courtney. Then you're saying you agree with the feminist basic ideals that men and women should be fairly equal and have fairly, you know, similar liberties and that sort of thing. Then you're saying, no, it should be all the Bibles. You like some of the feminist things, but you like the Bible things when they suit you. It's very frustrating to pin down this mentality because it's not a specific mentality, is the problem. This is the problem I find in a lot of apologia, is that it just doesn't, like, it's not cohesive or coherent. It's not following its own logic when it steps outside of the narrow realm that the Holy Book defines. which is kind of unfortunate. But logic is not a foundational stone of religion in general. At least not solid, consistent logic. There is a logic to it, don't get me wrong. It's just a bad kind of logic that can just be changed at a whim, essentially, depending on what stance you wish to support. And then we get more crap here, whatever. Courtney is a wife. She defines herself first as a wife, then as a mom, and then as a writer. She, McGeard Triggered, is the author of The Accidental Feminist, Restoring Our Delight in God's Good Design. Again, I don't know if it's good. Cancer is part of it. The devil was part of it. God knows everything, but he didn't know the devil was going to defect. I mean, come on. It's like Bill Clinton. Can you define is? In addition to writing, she is also an assistant editor, blah, blah, blah. Lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. That doesn't surprise me, honestly. Arkansas is about the most Christian state there is. And I'm surprised they're allowed to get away with half of the shit they are. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, we got to the end of that and none of us have died. I count that as a win. If there's anything else you guys would like to talk about, now is the time. This is basically the end of what I had planned here. Is there anything interesting to see here? I think I'll pass on all these. What else do we got? Recommended, there's no recommend, why do they even have the sliders if it's, damn it, can you actually have a decently designed website, and then you pull that shit? Like, look, that's an innocuous little advertisement for your own shit, that's good, it's exactly where it should be, it's out of the way, it's unobtrusive, but anybody who's actually looking for it is going to notice it. You go down here, you've got the break advertisement exactly where it should be. You've got this nice little quote here in a nice, pleasing font and color. And then you pull shit like this. It's broken. There should be more there. I shouldn't be able to just, like, hide one of them. Click the same button to go back and forth. Matt just says, oh yeah, I learned today that apparently Satan and Beelzebub are different people, and now I feel stupid. They're kinda. Depends on which part of the Bible you're reading. They're interchangeable as a word, but then again, sometimes they're not. Kind of like Ashtoreth and Asherah and the goddess of heaven or the moon or whatever. They're all kind of the same thing, and they're all different. It's weird. So weird. Anyway, I think that's going to be about it for tonight. I'm going to jump off of here pretty quick. Again, if you enjoyed that, be sure to click the thumbs up, you know, leave a comment after this stuff is gone. Because you can't really leave a comment when the video is still running, because that makes sense. And anyway, as always, this has been Reverend JR, thanking you for tuning in, and signing off.